There are some fantastic login champions when it comes to raids, so for today's video, we are going to talk about Cleopterix. Hey you guys, it's Cece. Welcome back to my channel. As mentioned, when logging into raid from time to time, we come across some champions that we get, whether that is some epics or whether that is some of the legendaries that we get. And some of them are really good and really helpful, and others, honestly, you might have some better champions. But as I mentioned, today we are talking about Cleopterix because she is actually a champion that I have pulled on my account, but I haven't actually built her till now. And the fact that she's a login champion, I figured we should highlight her, talk about her, and see where she might actually be useful. So off the bat, looking at this champion, I have actually taken her to 60 because, as I said, I actually pulled this champ. So she is a legendary attack type. And looking over the skills, first skill, attacks an enemy, has a 30% chance of placing a 25% weaken debuff for 2 turns. The chance increases to 50% if the target is under a hex debuff. Places a perfect veil buff on this champ for 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy under the hex debuff. Skill 2 places a 30% increased crit rate buff and 30% increased crit damage buff on this champ for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies. Has a 75% chance of placing block active skills debuff for 2 turns on targets under the hex debuff. And of course, we have something that is going to actually place the hex debuff. So places a 50% increased accuracy buff on this champ for 2 turns, then attacks all enemies. So we do have an AoE in here. 75% chance of placing a hex debuff for 3 turns. Has a 100% chance of placing a fear debuff for 1 turn instead of enemies under hex debuffs. And then also we do have the passive here. Counterattacks with a default skill every time this champion loses 30% HP or more in a single. Always counterattacks when attacked if 2 or more allies are dead. Now I will say her passive is actually pretty nice for something like Faction Wars. And that's part of the reason that I'm looking to actually build her now as opposed to having built her when I first got her. She is a login champion, and some people will think and say like, oh, don't build her. If you're gonna build her for the storage, like put her into storage, don't worry about her. But if you don't have a ton of legendaries, maybe you actually need to build her. Or if you're like me, you're like, you know what? She might actually go ahead and help my Faction Wars. And that's kind of the boat that I'm in, is for Faction Wars. The only champ I really have that's carrying right now is actually Wukong, who's doing a phenomenal job, but maybe he can use a little bit of help. I do have some pretty good epics along the way as well with this account, but for the legendary side of things, I think it'd be nice to give him a little bit of help. So today we're actually going to go ahead and finally build her. In terms of what I actually want to aim for this champion, there's a few things I want to take advantage of the skills. I do want to be able to land this hex, so she's definitely going to need some accuracy. And there is potential to get quite a bit of damage out of the skill too here. So when it comes to what gear I actually want to put onto her, a few different directions I can go, and I think it's going to depend on what I've actually got going on, what's available. I'm going to be looking more for stats versus sets, but we can make it work, why not? So I am thinking possibly perception. I get some accuracy in here as well as some speed. I could also go down the reflex route. However, I'm not actually planning on booking her at all, so I mean, I guess not necessarily a bad thing. Another option, I could do Relentless. I do still have quite a bit of gear in my Relentless here that I haven't been used on a champion yet. So all of these things is kind of where I'm going to start and see. But as I said, I'm pretty much using her for Faction Wars. So if I can make any of these really work, then I think, I mean, some type of a build is better than no build. And by putting gear on her, the nice thing is I can always take it off with the gear removal ticket anyway if I decide it doesn't work for her. But that's kind of where I'm going to start, and we'll see what we can potentially make work in here. In terms of gear and things that we're actually looking for in here, I do want her to be able to do a bit of damage. So I'm kind of liking this attack, crit rate, crit damage, bit of HP. So potentially I will start with this one. Now, this is the first champion I'm really not actually speed chasing on because, again, it's really Faction Wars I'm using her for. If I was to use her somewhere in my arena or something for PvP related, I might change my build up a little bit, worry about speed a little bit more than the stats that I'm actually looking for at the moment in terms of where I'm actually using her in game. So next, looking at her helmet, I'm just kind of going through and seeing like what my potentials are in here, because as I said, I do still want a bit of accuracy with her. And even though I am using mythical gear, and I understand, I get that, ideally I probably would want to save that for some of my like endgame amazing champs, I can always just take it off later, right? So that's kind of where and what I'm thinking about in actually going through and putting some gear onto her. But for now, I just feel like these stats are kind of working. I am liking the HP in here as well, because I do think it doesn't hurt to have some tankiness, especially going into faction wars, where ideally I want her to be alive too. So I think I'll still be able to get quite a bit of damage output from her just with her other skills alone. So kind of the other thing that I am thinking of, I would like to do either potentially crit damage on the gauntlet here. If I can get that crit rate high enough with everything else, then crit damage could work on there. And then of course for the boots, we're going to want to do something like speed. And then for the chest plate, could do attack. I could also potentially do like an HP or defense, something else that can keep her just alive a little longer and a little bit tankier, which I'm also not opposed to, because again, where I'm actually using her might not be a bad thing. So I did end up actually going with Relentless on her, giving the chance for an extra turn, and then I ended up just going with a broken set on her just to try to get some other stats, not really focusing on the set for those ones. So I am happy I got her on the Relentless. I think it'll work well enough for my purposes for her, and as I said, I don't plan on actually booking her. Don't think it's going to be necessarily needed, and for now I'm not going to worry about her masteries either. I do think her kit is still pretty good, especially if you don't have a lot of legendary champions. However, looking at my roster and who I've got, I don't think I need to take her beyond this level. So I do still think as a login champion, she's somebody that is going to be helpful for players. She is a legendary attack, and you do have potential to do quite a bit of damage with her. And as I said, if you don't have a lot of other champs, then she's definitely going to be someone who's going to be beneficial for you. If you're on the other side of that and you have champions that are filling that role for you, then yeah, you're probably maybe going to throw her in storage and not worry about it. But with faction wars, I do think that it kind of makes sense now for us to kind of go back in and maybe revisit and maybe potentially even build some of the champions that at some point in time we ignored. For myself, it's the ones that I ignored. Like I got her on this account and I was like, sweet, brought her to 60. And then in that time, I just got other champions and was kind of focusing on them. And now that I'm focusing back into faction wars a little bit, I'm realizing like, oh, hold up, wait a minute. Who do I need to build? Who needs some help? So having looked at my skinwalkers and seeing that it was essentially Wukong that was doing damage for me, I went back into my vault and I was like, is there anyone that I want to kind of build? And I noticed I had her, she was at 60 and I kind of had her half built. So the next thing I need to do is essentially just go ahead and ascend her. And then I should be able to get her into there and make some good progress. So I will take you guys along with my journey down into faction wars when the time comes for that. If you download Raid Shadow Legends using my link, I'm actually going to start you off with the free legendary champion on day 1. And then at level 10, level 20, and level 30, you'll get yourself an epic. That is 4 amazing champions that you can get just by downloading using my link. That's it for today's video, and any day that I get to build a new champion, I feel excited and feel like I have made progress. So I want you guys comment down below and let me know if you have built your Cleopterix and how do you actually use her. Be sure that you also subscribe so you don't miss out on my journey as a raid player as I take you through and I get further and further into my faction wars. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!